The story of Jones's Tavern will probably be told to you by others, but I just want to let you know that in the early 1960s, the rights to the building had been sold by descendants of the Jones family. By then, this building had been used for generations as an apartment house, and it still belonged to the Jones family right at the point when the building rights were sold. Anyway, Barbara and Don Nylander realized what was going on and mustered a group of people to get together, pool all of their funding, and at that point in time I was only 19 years old, but I had an interest in the place. When I first saw it, it was in a state of being dismantled on the front side. The interior walls had holes chopped in them, so the people who were going to do the salvage could figure out where the widest boards were. That's what they were really interested in, and the frame of the structure itself. Probably most of it would have gotten jumped. The building for the next 3.5 years went through a state of being put back together. The Nylanders painstakingly put all the boards back in place by matching up the nail holes in the timbers with the nail holes in the boards. It was not an easy process. They had it pretty well put back together by the time that lightning struck the building. And now, like I said, I recall it was on a Sunday night, and I was basically what they called an auxiliary firefighter at that point in time, waiting for an opening on the call department. The South Acton call department consisted of 18 men, and they were off duty. We had a day crew that came in at 8 o'clock in the morning, opened the station up, and they worked until 4:30 when they locked the place up and it went back to the call department. The uniform I'm wearing today is the uniform that they were wearing in 1967. It was very plain, but Acton back in 1967 was a pretty plain little town. We did not have everything that we have at our disposal today. Those 2 engines outside in 1967 were only 31 years old. They may have been a little bit past their prime, but they were still in service, and actually they were both taken out of service in 1972. So South Acton at that point in time had a 1,000-gallon pump, which was first due, along with the ladder truck, and engine 3 was the third piece of equipment out of South Acton to get here. West Acton had a 750-gallon pump that was sitting in reserve, and engine 4 was carrying hose. They ran hose lines off of their truck. Yours truly got in on it because the way they treated the auxiliary guys is they're under the watchful eye of the rest of the department. So I had already been on one good-sized fire prior to that, and that was when Miriam's Mill burned. That was the following summer that this building burned, and we tend to think that the fire originated from a bolt of lightning hitting a TV antenna that was on this back chimney. In any case, it grounded out over in the corner of the room behind me, and if you look at the walls, you can see a distinct V pattern from the fire as it burned. If you investigate fires, which is what I was doing when I finally left the place, the fire department, what you do is you work from the outside in, and you look for patterns of unusual burns. A burn a fire starts, it always leaves a pattern. And like I said, when you're looking at fires, you start at the outside and you work in. If we were looking at this room right now, we would look at the places that have burned the least, and we would proceed to where it is burned the most. In this particular building, it is burned the most down in that corner. When you get in there and look around, you will see the charring in the room. It is the deepest overhead on this timber on the back side. This is a summer beam, and this one, believe it or not, supports the entire second floor. There's one above this that supports the entire third floor. So I don't even know how many rooms were in this place, but it was chopped up into 4 apartments when it was in the process of being dismantled, because it had served the town as a 4-family apartment. And it was owned until 1956 by Carrie Kimball, who just happened to own Exchange Hall and the other buildings around in the neighborhood. So, besides the Jones, Carrie Kimball was her maiden name was Carrie Jones. So, anyway, she's a Tuttle, Carrie Tuttle. But they descend from the Jones family, and it was the Joneses that originally had this place as a store, and then the son-in-law, James Tuttle, took over the store and expanded South Acton's business and built Exchange Hall in 1860. This place continued to serve a useful purpose. Members of the staff that lived in, that worked at Exchange Hall lived here, and a lot of them lived down along Maple Street, Railroad Street, which, by the way, Railroad Street used to cross. Until 1904, it went right straight across to Stowe Street. And the final thing that changed things in this area was when, I gotta think of his name, I believe his name was Percy Tuttle. He was the grandson of Abram Tuttle. He got struck by a train and killed here, and that was the final thing that caused the South Acton Bridge to go in there, because Tuttle's house, James Tuttle's house, was right where the bridge is today. But anyway, getting back to this place, Tuttle ran the thing as a store early on, and then the 1840s expanded and built a second store right up on the, adjacent to where the fire station is. And then this place became kind of a boarding house. Later on, still, it became apartments. The 4 partners of Tuttle's, Jones, and Weatherby voluntarily decided in 1898 to discontinue business. Varnum Tuttle was born in 1823. His older brother James was born in 1818, and then he had 2 sisters. One married Jonathan Kimball Weatherby, born in 1832, and the 4th member of the group. I'm going to get it sooner or later, I'll think about it. But anyway, they had all reached a long life and decided to retire. And there were so many other things that happened. The railroad, during their lifetime, made the area grow, and it also started to get to the point where it was taking business away from the department store across the street. So like I said, in 1898, they voluntarily decided to give up business. The only one that kept going was Jonathan Kimball Weatherby, and he kept his insurance business going in Exchange Hall until 1924, when he sold that out to his nephew, Tavern Loudon. It was another niece, Dorothy Loudon, that ended up with the place in 1956 when Carrie Kimball decided that she had had enough years and passed away. But at that point in time, they had sold off almost all of their interests, and Dorothy Loudon kept the place going until the early 1960s, and she and her husband decided to give up shop and move and sell the building. Now, after the Tuttles had closed up everything, the Nylanders found this place in a state of being taken apart, and the lumber was going to be taken to to Connecticut. They bought the rights to the building, and that began the ironwork farm. That went well, and like I said, until July 25th, 1967, when the fire originated in here. After the fire was over, the decision was, what are we going to do with the place? And fortunately, at that point in time, nobody knew what they were going to do. What would insurance do to cover the damage, and so on. Also, this is 1967. The following year, I believe, the McCabe's up on the hill who owned the Faulkner House decided that they wanted to find out what the future would be of that place, and decided to offer it for sale, first refusal to the ironwork farm. And this place already had this building, which they had restored, and they wanted to see that building restored as well. So a nucleus of people banded money and everything together, just like they did with this place, and took it over. And this place sort of went into mothballs. It went into mothballs for quite a long time. It took time to get enough money together to stabilize the back part that had been burned away. And Larry Sorley, who is with us today, was one of the prime people behind trying to see what could be done with the current building codes, because as you can well imagine, a 1732 building is not necessarily up to code for today's building standards. Scott Morse, who was the captain on duty today, told the last group that this building is far better built than today's buildings. And he's absolutely right, because there is no lamination in this building. Everything here is solid, and it takes a time for something like this, which is like 12 inches wide and maybe 11 inches high, to burn away to the point of where it's going to become weakened and disintegrate. So this building wasn't designed to take a fire, but the way it was built back then, they knew what they were doing. And they did not cut corners, even though you see beams that are 4 foot on such that rock solid lumber is oak or chestnut, something that is capable of spanning a distance. It was hard to get lumber back then, but all the buildings in this town of this time period are built the same way. This isn't nothing unique as far as a 1730s building is concerned. The only thing that is kind of unique is we just don't have that many of them left. And this place had a serious fire in 1841, I believe, which was when the main chimney here, the upper part of the main chimney was dismantled and rebuilt. And they felt at that point in time that there was something that was going on around town where to get rid of these huge fireplaces that you can walk into and come up with a working fireplace that produces more heat. If you look at over at the Faulkner House, you'll see the huge fireplaces. You don't see the huge fireplaces in this house anymore because they were removed in the 1840s. That also gave you room for stairways and stuff like that. And I got to say, I'm really indebted to the fact that I worked with Robert Nylander a long time between my early days here with this place and later up to the time of his death in 1987. By then I had been on the Historical Commission with him for 16 years, and I was getting a real good education on what Acton had to offer. And what we had to offer in Acton was indicative of what was in all of the towns around here. We just didn't get a real appreciation for it.